We lost Raceway Park a little while ago, but we still have Elko Raceway, so I encourage you to take a peek out there. They're one of the sponsors for the exhibit. And one of the drivers that was out there, and he is in the Elko Hall of Fame, Johnny Boegeman, who was part of the SuperAmerica Knights racing team in the 1970s, along with Dick Trickle and Tom, is it Refner? Refner. He won the Elko Speedway Track Championship in 1975. The year my daughter was born. He also frequently raced at Raceway Park Hill in Shakopee, as well as racetracks all around the United States. He was inducted into the Elko Speedway Hall of Fame in 2012. Tonight we're very lucky to have Kevin Busse here to do some interviews with, Johnny. Kevin, you were announcer, correct, at Raceway Park?
Yes, I was the announcer at Raceway Park from '95 until the track closed in 2013. And I spent 18 years there, only missed one event in those 18 years of announcing. And as we get ready to get started, one of the things I want to say in regards to racing then in comparison today, before I started announcing at Raceway Park, I was a fan going back into the 60s and 70s. And one of the things that was then, you'd come to the track not just to watch racing, but you had heroes. You had people you looked up to. You came to the track to see people race that, and to see what are they going to do this week? What's going to happen with my favorite driver? And that's something that's really lacking in local motorsports today, and I really wish we could get that back. And I am really honored to be here because Johnny is one of those guys I'm talking about. This was a guy that you would go out to Raceway Park, Elko, Twin City Speedway, around the Midwest to watch him compete, to see what he was going to do. And I brought along a lot of questions tonight, some information out of press releases and news reports at the time that I think you'll understand what I'm talking about as to why he was such a hero, someone to follow. And that's something we need these days, really, in motorsports. And
go sit down, but I want to thank you for doing this for us tonight.
I'm
And
glad
Johnny,
to be
thanks
here.
for agreeing to come here. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to sneak out of the way.
All right.
You guys roll.
And again, I am honored to be here. Johnny, you want to sit down, or you want to stand, or what? How do you want to do this? Let's sit. Okay. One of the things is, I'm looking at the presentation up there on the PowerPoint, and Johnny, you look like a young guy in those pictures. You were, but here's the deal. Those pictures, you were racing for about 10 plus years before those pictures were taken. The very first thing that I found on you, you said 1963. The very first thing I found on you was a Raceway Park driver's list from 1964 in the event program. You were racing with your brothers, off and on throughout those years, Clyde and Alan.
Right.
And what was it that got you interested in stock car racing at such a young age? How old were you at that time? And what were the influences that made you say, I want to be a race car driver?
Well, my brother Clyde raced. They had a bunch of friends in town, and Raceway, everybody went to the track on Sunday nights. That's what everybody did for entertainment. And my brother Clyde was racing, and I went out and pitted with him a little bit. And about 3 weeks, I thought, this is for me. But I was 17 when I graduated, so I had to wait till I was 18. That was the next year, and I still had to have you had to get a waiver to race from your parents. So that's when I started the next year, and I couldn't stand to watch him race. He was too close to me, you know.
Right.
It made me sick to my stomach.
Everyone's familiar with your number 61 Camaro. I saw in this 1964 driver's list, you were listed as the number 91 1950 Ford Hobby Stock, is what it shows in 1964.
I brought some pictures. We can pass these around if you.
All right.
This is my very first car. This was a '39 Ford Coupe.
All right, can everybody see this? You want to? Here, let's do this. I'm going to hold them up,
Okay.
and then I'll start them around, and you can describe what we've got here.
This is the very first year I raced, and I raced probably a summer with that. And there was a claiming. One of my friends, my brother's friends, claimed the car for me for $100. You can claim the car, and I raced that, and then we thought we were good. We went out to Bird Island, County Fair, and ran, and thought, well, we were on the circuit, you know.
So what do we have here?
And that's a collection of, that was a hobby stock, and these are hobbies and sportsman class. So that was a middle class at that time. So that's how we moved up. And then the top line was, the next one is late models.
Okay. And I'm going to talk about this one here later on as we're talking. You guys will see this when the pictures are going around. This is a convertible. Now, you know how stock car racing is today. Imagine what it was like in the 1960s to be running a convertible with a roll cage on a racetrack. And a lot of the drivers were doing it at that time.
Yes.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that too. What do we got here, Johnny?
That was just another late model. That was Bobby Allison chassis. We bought all the parts from him and built it. It was probably the worst late model I ever had.
Really?
I won one race all year with it. And we came out on warm-up day and we put it on its roof. We were at Elko warming up, and it was so early in the spring, there were snowbanks in the center, and I hit a snowbank and flipped it right over.
We'll talk about it. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that rollover, because that kind of messed up the whole season for you.
Yeah.
Now here is one where the Black Knight starts to show up.
That's right, yeah. That was SuperAmerica. I believe it's on that Allison car. That was the first year sponsor, and they picked me up halfway through the year. And then this year, this car here, this car, I raced it as, they called it the dice car. The number was 61. And then this is the first night of Black Years. That was second, and they had a protest at the track. The late model guys were leaving the track.
Yep,
we're
going to talk about that too.
And my sponsor said, no, I need you to run here. This is where our stations are. You know, so that, he made me the bad guy.
We'll talk about that too. And this is the car I think everybody's familiar with that was following you in the 70s.
That's the car I won the championship with, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about all this stuff here. Again, driving that 50 Ford hobby stock. You want to know the type of driver this guy was in 64, 2 months into the season. 2 months in, you were already racking up heat and feature wins when Raceway Park had back-to-back racing on Saturdays and Sundays. You were around some heavy competition at that time. Norm Setrin, Dan Chabrowski, both of those guys, top winning drivers all around the area. What were the other drivers like back then? Because like I said, you were really young at the time. How old when you got started?
I was 18.
18. And how did they treat younger drivers like yourself?
Nobody would help you too much.
Okay.
but Bud Helm, he's the only guy I really remember really trying to help me. I was running, and they were running the modifieds, and I was running in a sportsman class. And he says, you know, when you go around the corner, he says, you're looking out the window behind you. He says, you know, every time you turn around, you leave off the gas, whether you know that or not. And sure enough, I paid attention, and I was, so I quit looking out the window. I started using the mirror.
Up until 1965, Raceway Park had two main divisions. It was the hobby stocks and the modifieds.
Right.
Late models, they were also called sportsmen at the time, I believe. They were added that summer, but it was only for a short time because the track closed over a protest involving the modified division back in '64. Do you remember what all that was about?
The modifieds priced themselves out of the game. There wasn't enough money. They were so expensive to run. And so there were very few cars, too. There were probably 15 cars is all they ever had. And they were just too expensive, and they were demanding more money. And Darwin paid really well, to be honest with you. So I don't know what the whole protest, it was over that, and they fixed a race. The drivers finished just like they started, and Darwin was so mad because it's cheating, you know. I mean,
Yeah, because there was supposedly a big protest over a big violation in the rules for the modifieds.
All the money and all that, and that was the end of the modifieds. He just dropped it.
Wow. Yeah, the whole. In case you didn't know, Darwin, he closed the entire track. He shut racing down mid-season and said, "We're not racing anymore. The track's closed until further notice. Sorry." And he not only left the modified drivers, but other drivers in other divisions too were just out of luck. Elko wasn't open yet at that time. So there wasn't a whole lot of places you guys could go to race.
This was really it. And Twin City was dirt track. It was the only asphalt track in Minnesota, you know. And if you wanted to race, that's where you raced asphalt. You
Right.
know?
Yeah, Raceway was, it was something special for the time. There was no other paved speedways in Minnesota. Raceway was the very first, and one of the first in the Midwest at that time.
Right.
So definitely a lot of history with Raceway Park. Shakopee should be very proud of
And
that.
that's how Elko came to be.
Yep.
Charlie Hansen owned a junkyard, and he raced modifieds, but he owned a junkyard in Lakeville. And he bought that farm out there where Elko is, and he built that racetrack. And, you know, he's come race for me, I'll pay decent and all this, you know, and then he sold it to Phil Stewart before it ever got off the ground, you know.
Right. Well, in '66, Elko Speedway did open up for business, and the snow was still on, their very first race of snow was still on the ground.
Yep.
Raceway Park reopened that year as well with a new covered grandstand. There's some pictures floating around somewhere that show that beautiful, huge covered grandstand at Raceway Park. You made the switch from a Ford to a '57 Chevy. And that was a style that you ran for a whole lot of years, that '57 Chevy style. The information I got, you started out opening day at Raceway Park, you got a heat win, followed by the feature, and you were up against a Minneapolis driver by the name of Dick Giles.
Correct.
Who never raced asphalt before. This was his first time, and you wound up finishing second to him. And the press release, get this, it called Johnny a very promising young driver. And by the following 2 weeks, you were leading the Sportsman Stock Division. By mid-season, you received even more attention because you got in a big points battle that included Larry Smith and Mike Mergic. And every week it was heat wins and top 4 finishes in every feature. This battle with Larry Smith and Mike Mergic, that went on for several years. And again, big names back then. Were you guys all friends, or was there some rivalry on and off the track
Larry
as well?
Smith was a real good friend. We hung together as a
And
couple.
Larry was from here in Shakopee.
Yeah. His wife and my wife, and we played cards in the winter, and we were really good friends. And we were all friends, but Mike was a racing friend, you know. And you might be mad at guys, but you know, when anybody ever got down or you needed a part, even if they didn't like you, they'd give you the part. That's a pretty good racing community, you know. It's a pretty tight-knit thing. Everybody comes to your aid when you need it. You know?
Right, right.
So
It's a
part
close
of the
group.
attraction, you know,
In other words, you got along with them pretty good, but when it was on the track, it was all business.
pretty much.
If you want to know how some of this went, one of the most historic events at Raceway Park was the 1966 July 4th Mid-Season Championships. I was able to find a news report on this. Now, if you guys are familiar with the width of Raceway Park in its closing years, and the track changed a little bit. Back then, there was no figure-8 track or anything like that. But the news report at the time described this July 4th weekend championship as a 4-wide battle between Bud Barfneck of St. Paul, Larry Smith of Shakopee, Mike Mergic of Bloomington, and yourself. You guys went back and forth between the 4 drivers, fans on their feet the entire race, and at the end, all 4 split a $2,000 payout. That is how close these guys were in that championship. And again, now knowing the layout of Raceway Park with those tight bank turns,
Pretty small.
yeah, I find running 4 wide with you, Smith, and Mergic, you guys were all in '57 Chevys, and Bud was driving a '56 Buick. I kind of find it hard to believe as wide as those cars were back then. Was the news just running with this to try to hype the story? Or what was it like to be driving that hard, that close on such a tight track as Raceway?
You really couldn't run 4 wide, but, you know, the cars were bigger for one thing,
Right.
and the track was pretty narrow. And you could get 4 wide when somebody's trying to pass or something, but you would never stay that way.
Right.
You'd never make it through the corner.
Right, because the way the news report made it up, you guys were
Yeah.
4 wide the whole darn
Well,
race,
yeah.
pretty much.
Just battled each other probably the whole race.
Right.
More so than anything,
Right.
you know. And Bud was Bud helped me build the car I was running that year. I met him for the first time through his son. I knew his son very well. So Bud helped me, and then Bud started late in the season. Bud was blind in one eye, and he used to have Bill Mueller drive for him. And he drove for himself, and my mom would come out, and if he beat me out of the race, oh, he didn't fix your car. He did it on purpose, you know. And she'd be so mad. No, I said, no, that ain't the way it works. I said, you know.
Larry Smith won the track championship that year.
Yeah.
You finished 4th in points. And again, this is only a few years into your racing at Raceway Park. The wins continued. Going into the '67 season, you got several back-to-back feature wins. That was also when Raceway Park celebrated its 10th anniversary. One of the things, and I should have brought it with because it's really interesting, there's a photograph, Marge Elfman's book, Racing Down Memory Lane. It shows you and your wife spending your honeymoon at Raceway Park. She's dressed really fancy, looking magnificent, and you're standing there in a fire suit. Racing must have been pretty important for the both of you back then to put your honeymoon on hold so you could go racing. Tell us a little bit about how that worked, racing and family.
It's a passion and love, and you got to have a wife that loves it. Many racers quit on account of their wives because it takes all your time. You know, you held a job, you come home from work, you eat supper, right out in the garage every night. And on weekends you're racing and they're in the stands, you know.
Right.
But she liked it, you know. That's I don't know. She'd close her eyes like I did with my brother. It made her sick to her stomach to watch a race. I don't know. I can't describe that feeling. But I couldn't watch my brother race. I could watch anybody else race because I didn't care about him. I suppose I don't know. But she toughed that out many years, you know. And everybody always says she'd watch with her eyes closed.
Yeah. In June of '67, Elko Speedway News article, now I want to read it here to you. Johnny Boegeman of Shakopee, considered in racing circles as the top late model driver, proved that contention over the past weekend by finishing in the top 5 both Saturday and Sunday, taking home nearly $200 in the process. Now, in 1967, that was some pretty big money, $200. Driving his blue number 61, Boegeman took a 4th and 5th in successive feature races that included the top stock car racing names in the Midwest. So you were already getting pretty well known as a driver in just those few short years.
I did fairly well my first years, you know. I don't know, I just loved it. But I always started out very good in the spring, you know, like a baseball player, pitcher. I was always hotter in the spring, and then I died off, you know, like you said, the points fell off in the end. I don't know if I lost the drive or the interest or what it was, but yeah, that was good company. Norm Setrin and Danny Zabrowski and Bud Helm and Dwight Larson. They were around for years. They were the guys. They were my heroes growing up, you know, when I got interested in racing,
right.
You know, because they'd been around so long. And to beat them was pretty special. In fact, probably my most memorable thing in racing, and I don't want to whine and cry about it, but my rookie year with that convertible, I led the point standings as a rookie against all those guys were running yet. And the last night, nobody could have beat me, and the track gave triple points, and I got just to draw audience, and I lost the track championship by 1 point as a rookie. So that hurt. I feel they cheated me because they never ever did that before and never did it again.
Wow.
You know, and there were some other circumstances, but and the car wasn't running as good in the end of the year either. You know, I won the first 5 features that year and really got off to a great start, and it was just a great race car and a great crew. You know, everybody thinks it's all driver, but it's crew, and you got to have a team.
Oh yeah. And just so you guys understand too the importance of Elko and Raceway Park in Midwest racing, both tracks got together in '67, the very first time. It was called the Minnesota State Late Model Asphalt Championships. And what it did, it pitted the Raceway Park and Elko drivers up against drivers from Wisconsin, Iowa, and Illinois. And they were raced at Elko on a Saturday night, and that was considered a qualifier for the big race at Raceway Park on Sunday. And again, there was some top names starting to come into Minnesota at this time. compete. Ron Olson, by the way, won that event. I wish he'd be here tonight because that was a big event. 68 press releases say you moved from the late models to the sportsman division. Explain the difference in what the divisions were back then.
The hobby stock was a 39 Ford. It's a pretty cheap car. You know, we used the road packer. Of a road packer for asphalt. That was our slick, you know.
Really?
It was cheap racing, you know. And it's pretty basic. And then the sportsman, you could build a little better motor. See, and then the hobby stocks, how they had a $100 claim on the car. You could finish in the top five, somebody could buy your car for $100. And if you didn't sell it, you couldn't drive the rest of the year. So
really, you were out for the whole year?
You were out for the year.
Oh my.
And then the next class up, you probably a little bit more motor, you know, and then the late models was quick change rear ends, and a lot more money was the deal.
Right. So the whole idea behind it, by doing this claiming and things like that, was so nobody went hog wild, souping their car way
buy
up.
a $5,000 motor when everybody else is running a $500 motor,
Right.
you know, and it kept it even, right?
It kept an even playing field
You might
amongst
win for a night, but then
the drivers.
they claim you.
I couldn't find a lot of information on you regarding crashes. You mentioned the rollover. We're going to talk about that. I did come across one from July 4th weekend of '68. Here's the quote from the newspaper. Last Saturday's races at Elko Speedway had some extra excitement when Johnny Boegeman of Shakopee rolled his number 61 Ford on the south turn, the car then catching fire. Johnny was pulled from the burning car without injury. Boegeman returned onto Raceway Park on Sunday to compete. Now, that fire must have set you back a little bit because I couldn't find any more information in the press releases until September of that year when the National Short Track Championships down in Rockford, Illinois reported that Johnny Boegeman is ready with a new car. Track safety back then was way different than to what it is now. A lot of you who watch NASCAR now on television, you know all about the safety features that are in the cars now. But what were some of the things like in the cars back then in the mid-'60s, late '60s for safety?
My first recollection, we used to use aircraft, get them from the Army surplus. They were a seat belt, and they were canvas about this wide. And we'd take a chain, pull the chain, and then you'd put it through the floorboard and wrap it around the frame. But when you'd go off the track at Raceway, the track dropped out about this much, so the frame would bottom for just a second, and it would grab that chain and pull you so tight that you thought it was going to bust you. It scared the hell out of you, to tell you. You know?
It's like, what happened now?
Yeah, but it happened so quick, but you know, that's...
I mean, roll cages, obviously.
Roll cages.
Made out of, what were you guys using back then for roll cages?
Any kind of pipe, almost.
Any kind of pipe.
Yeah, yeah.
Doesn't this sound like fun racing back then?
You know, when you talked about that car, that was part of a claim. I bought one of Larry Smith's 57 Chevys over the winter, and the car really ran good. So if you didn't want to get claimed, what you do is you run strong, and when you get up to fifth, you just let yourself fall back to fifth in the feature and take the money for that. Because if you got claimed, you couldn't drive no more if you didn't sell it.
Right.
Well, a bunch of us bought Dick Sting, and I don't know, there was a bunch. We agreed if one of us got claimed, the rest of us would let our cars go too and not fall back, you know, so everybody, we'd be changing cars. So, I can't remember the guy's name, Gene Kruger was his name.
Okay.
And this Ford was a piece of junk, really. I mean, it had galvanized pipe, which we use steel pipe, you know, and it's a lot safer. It was a piece of junk, and he claimed my car before the 4th of July. Well, the 4th of July was the big money weekend.
Right.
And everybody said, well, you shouldn't have let him claim me before the weekend, so they didn't follow our agreement and let me claim their cars until the 4th of July. And that car, like I say, it rolled over and the roll bars cracked and everything. And I got pretty mad at the officials for, you know, the car was really illegal. It shouldn't have been able to, it wasn't a very safe car. And then I put on that car, an official 68 claim car, because I knew it was going to go through everybody.
Right.
And it did. We went through like 4 or 5 guys, and finally a guy named Dick Collins, who I helped get started quite a bit. He said, I buried it in the backyard. Thank God he did.
So we're at 1969 now, and Phil Stewart acquires Twin City Speedway in the North Metro, making what was known as the Minnesota Tri-Circuit. Racing every Fridays at Twin City, Saturdays at Elko, and then Sundays at Raceway Park. A lot of the drivers made it a 3-day weekend of racing, competing at all the tracks. This is where that understanding wife or girlfriend thing, I think, comes into play. A lot of the drivers, the veterans that I've talked with from back then, many feel that Twin City Speedway was probably the best of the 3 tracks, better than Elko and Raceway Park. What was your experience with Twin City Speedway?
It was completely different from what we were used to learn. It was a small bowl, like Raceway is really a small track.
Right.
And Elko was kind of a dangerous track, kind of flat, long, you know. And Twin City was, the same setup didn't work as worked at the other 2 tracks. I really ran well at Twin City, so I really liked the track, you know. I was almost unbeatable there. I just took to it and just liked it, you know. And but the best part about this 3-track thing is, you know, we used to run, at one time we ran one in Raceway Park at Sunday nights.
Right.
And you did all this work, spent all this money, because it's your one chance to do well, and you didn't want the car to break, so you kept everything. Well, now you could run 3 nights for almost the same money, and it was like bonus money, you know, because it really didn't cost any more except for the traveling and the pit fees and stuff to run 3 tracks. So we were in Fat City as far as your billfuls went with this 3-track thing, you know.
Right. That had to make for, well, like you said, busy summer weekends.
Yeah.
In April, you won the Sportsman Opener at Elko, got second a week later along with a heat win, and the press release at the time said, John Boegeman will be the one to watch all season. At Twin City Speedway, John Boegeman and Dick Stang ran a tight 1-2 battle for the top spot that was an outstanding example of driving by a pair of pilots who can drive with anyone in the country. You matched wins with Stang for much of the 1969 season. And back then, we were talking about the work you had to do on the cars. A lot of them now, well, like with Raceway, when I was announcing there, some of the guys had cars. They'd have a Raceway Park car, and they'd have an Elko Speedway car. Back then, you guys didn't have a second or third car for each track. How tough was it to be adjusting a car each night to get it ready and still be competitive for all those different track layouts?
It was actually easier, because like I say, when you were running one night, if you made a mistake, there went your whole week, you know. And when you had 3 nights, it took some pressure off. You didn't have to do it well every night. You tried to, but I mean, if something happened, you're a flat tire or whatever, you didn't lose the whole weekend. And what was? Yeah, part of the question.
It was, you know, to sit and adjust the night and for the car for each track. I mean, I know guys used to swap rear ends between Elko and Raceway and things like that. It sounds like an awful lot of work just for, again, a 3-day weekend.
When you're doing it, it seems like nothing, because you're so involved. But it actually was easier, because, you know, like I say, you just left things go a little bit, and if it broke, you weren't out your whole weekend. You know?
Right.
So, and you spent about the same amount of money, so it was like a bonus for us. That changed, and Twin City was the only one. We changed tire sizes and everything there. Had a different set of tires, but yeah, you had one car, and you'd blow a motor if you didn't get a motor by the weekend. I went through a whole year and lost 2 motors and never missed a race. That's how good my engine guy was, but at least he stayed up all Friday night assembling the motor, and it made it a hassle, though, you know, to try and make. And if you missed a week, you really lost out on the point standings, and that was everybody's goal, was to win the track championship, kind of.
Right. I did find one incident of possible cheating, I'm sorry to say. During the 1969 Firecracker $1,000 series of races over the July 4th holiday, another driver, doesn't say who, protested your carburetor, and that resulted in you getting a hefty fine, it says. But I can tell you, it must not have bothered you too much, though, because the press release later stated that you were the top dollar earner in the sportsman division over that total weekend. How big were these 4th of July, Memorial Day, Labor Day events between the 3 tracks?
The 4th of July was always the best. They sold out always, standing room. When everything was going good that was just always a big purse, and it was the biggest purse of the year, I would say, always.
And drew a lot of crowds too.
Yeah, and this deal you're talking about was at Twin City, and I had we had to run 2 barrels that year.
Uh-huh.
And I had a Holly 2-barrel on it, and I worked for Ford, and Ford had put them on their Clevelands as an experimental. Well, they said it ain't a production thing, and I said it was a production thing. And I could have cheated, again, I had it covered, and we did that to fool with each other.
Mhm.
You know, it was a thing, there was a guy who protested me, I remember. And so I uncovered it and let him see it, and I didn't pay a fine, I took a suspension. He said, Phil Stewart, he kind of hurt himself, because I was a pretty good draw at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And he called me up on Monday morning, he says, well, I can't just let you come back and ignore the rules, he says, but how about if I fine you $700, and I'll give you the money back at the end of the year, and you can come back and race. I said, I'll come back. And I was a pretty stubborn guy. I says, I don't believe I was cheating. I says, I'll come back, but I won't pay the fine. And well, he said, I can't do that. I said, well, so I went and ran dirt.
Uh-huh.
And I ran Cedar Lake, I ran Princeton. I won the first 3 dirt features I ran. I made more money running dirt than I was making out here. So I almost did, and I took some of his cars away, Stang and Don James. They said, no, the money I was making, they came over and ran dirt, so he lost out that way, you know. You know, it was a tit for tat for me. It was kind of flawed because I didn't think I should have been suspended,
Right,
you know.
right.
Maybe it was cheated, I don't know, but it wasn't in my mind.
Okay, okay. In 1970, I read that you moved back to the late models and you were driving that 70 Chevy Chevette convertible. You got in a big run for points against Dan Chabrowski and Dick Stang. Convertibles were a big thing with some of the drivers then. I've seen film and video of a lot of the drivers back then running convertibles with the exposed roll cage. What was that like?
That came about through Bob DeSolo, who was a veteran with Norman now, and I think he's one of the better drivers that ever raced. He raced in some NASCAR events and that before anybody else around here ever did. And Jim Daly owned his car, I believe, and they built this convertible, and they did it for weight, to keep the weight on the bottom, go through the corner, and he put the super light car, put the motor lower, and Bobby was winning from the back of the pack almost every night, and that's what brought the convertible thing on. Everybody thought,
Really?
this is the way to go.
Again, safety-wise, though, the fact you're not, I mean, I know from standing near the track when races were going, there's a lot of rubber and rocks and gravel flying through the air. To be in an open car, yeah, I know you got a helmet on and everything, but still, nothing like going really fast and getting pelted by a rock off of somebody's tire.
But, you know, on my cage, above my head, I put a heavy screen above there, a real heavy screen that would wear, you know. But the openness is a little different, you know, but a piece of tin would wear out in 2 seconds, you're up otherwise. So really, it was just probably as safe as anything else, you know.
Really? Wow. Okay. Well, as you've seen on the photo that was going around, that's a very unique looking race car without the roof on it.
Yeah, it does seem really strange the first time you drive.
1971 season opener. Elko went to the big track. They expanded to 3/8 mile to accommodate 3 wide racing, or so was the claim. Now the finest 3/8 mile asphalt oval in the nation, according to Tom Doherty, who was a visiting NASCAR official at that time. That was also a big year for you because you won the first feature race on the new track, and the next night you finished 3rd at Raceway Park, won the Elko feature again the next week after setting a lap time of 15.91 during the track's first ever time trials. You backed it up with a 3rd feature win the following week when Elko set an attendance record, filling the new 6,000 seat grandstand over capacity with 6,181 spectators. Things were really starting to happen for you in Minnesota stock car racing in the early 70s.
That was my rookie year in the late models. That's the year I was talking about. I felt like I cheated out of the championship. It's water over the dam.
1 month later, seating expanded to 7,000 at Elko to host the Uncola 7,000 50-lap July 4th weekend event. You won a heat race. The feature was won by Dick Trickle. The story I heard, Dick Trickle arrived right at the end of qualifying, quickly unloaded the car off the trailer, went out and set a new track qualifying record of 15.72. In August, Tom Refner of Rudolph, Wisconsin comes to Elko and wins the Old Style Beer 200. Now this is way before the SuperAmerica Racing Nights came about. Dick Trickle is, of course, known all across the Midwest by this time. How familiar were you with Dick Trickle and Tom Refner as they started coming to the Minnesota tracks more and more?
Dick Trickle, to this day, is the greatest short track racer that'll ever be, in my mind. You know, there's just nobody close. And Tom would be a pretty close second. Tom was more of a budget racer than Dick. Dick went for it, you know. But, I don't think anybody was better than Dick Trickle. And they came, Jim Bach and Mark Marzofka, there was a whole bunch of Wisconsin. The difference in them and us is Wisconsin had, I don't know how many paved tracks, but they ran 5 nights a week.
Really?
Yeah. They ran 5 nights, they were pros compared, we were like, be like a gopher going playing on the Vikings, you know. And, you know, you're definitely, that's what it was kind of like. And they went for that thing, you know, they didn't have to do good every night, you know, they'd run used tires and run over cheaper things, but they were professionals. That's the way I looked at it, you know. And Dick did it for a living all his life, you know. And Tom, he worked a job, but then he took off a few summers and did it for a living too. And I was going to do that one year, and I was going to take all my vacation and run, and Tom says, John, I don't want to think you want to do that. It's pretty tough to make a living doing this, you know. Really? So he talked me out of it, and thank God he did, probably.
1972 wasn't a real good year for you in racing. In April at the Elko season opener, you rolled your new SuperAmerica Chevy in warm-ups. Thankfully, the press release of the crash said you recently upgraded to a hardtop. But that crash kept you out of the main action until about August. What happened there in the warm-ups that the car went over?
Well, it was early spring, and they had a warm-up day, and there was snow on the infield. And I spun the car out, and I hit the snowbank, and it flipped it right over, you know. And it was like a dark cloud. The car, I won one consolation race all year, and I never worked so hard in my life, you know. I was just trying to, but it was also the first coil spring car we ever ran. This was a Allison. I went down to Alabama and bought the suspension and stuff, and we blamed it on the coil springs always, and it really wasn't it. Later in the year, I crashed this car pretty good at, I don't remember if it was the fair, but we cut the body off, and my pit guy says, oh my God. And the roll cage was good, but there was no diagonal bracing, so the car was flexing.
Really?
And it was changed, and we'd go out in warm-ups, and we'd rent the track during the week and try this car out, and that car turned 15:32, first lap, and then it went to 16 seconds the next lap, without changing a thing. And we never could figure it out, but that's what was happening. The car was bending, actually twisting. And I told my pick, you tell me 15:32, I'm going to smack you in the mouth. That's how bad it got. We were just kidding, but you know, you got the message too.
Even though it wasn't a good season for you race-wise in '72, you were part of something really big that season. There was a boycott against Elko Speedway and Raceway Park going on at the time by the Minnesota Stock Car Racing Association. You are credited for ending that boycott. I do want to read you the news story on this. The MSCRA, that's the Minnesota Stock Car Racing Association business meeting, quickly turned into a bargaining session when driver John Boegeman invited track owner Phil Stewart to attend. Boegeman's move was spurred by the possible loss of his sponsor, also a sponsor of Stewart's operations who wishes to remain anonymous. After Boegeman's sponsor made suggestions to both the association and Stewart, the bargaining session was underway. Fortunately for area racing fans, the gap was closed by Boegeman's surprise move, about 45 hours before Elko's starting time on Saturday. seen the boycott that involved guaranteed payouts and a question of how Stewart wasn't promoting the races like he should have. What was that all about with the sponsors and everything else at the time that got you so involved in it?
Bill Owens, I think, who was the driver, he's the one who ended up running Elko. And he claimed, we ran on a percentage of the gate, so many people, and he always claimed they put counters there and Stewart was cheating us. And now, hindsight, I don't believe it for a second, but always ended up with the track. But it was the worst thing we ever did. We struck at Raceway one time, not just the illegal race.
Right.
But when we struck, we lost the crowd, and we never got it back, because people, they come out there to relax, not to be involved in your troubles. And it was the biggest mistake we ever made, you know, and I boycotted with them. And it was just never the same after, it never recovered.
So you basically said, enough's enough, let's get to the meeting and let's get this worked out so we can get back
And
racing.
then my sponsor, SuperAmerica, was Don Engelbrecht, who was very good friends to this day. We play cards and he became very good friends. Very, way ahead of his time on this racing. We gave posters away. We visited cancer sections at a hospital when we traveled. Gave trinkets away. And he did this all before NASCAR even gave a postcard away. And he was quite an innovator, you know, I would give him more credit than anybody. And when we went into this Hall of Fame thing, it was going to be Dick, Tom, and myself, and we told him we wouldn't go unless he was included. Because,
really?
Yeah, I think he did more for racing around here than, and not just because he's my friend, he did so much that he helped me a bunch. Like, we'd go to Rockford, Illinois, and the end of the year, this West Salem, and that was a big deal for us. That was what we did. But this Rockford, that drew a lot of cars. That was the one that started all these Oncola 500s out here and stuff. And he wouldn't pay you much in the regular races, but he paid real good on the 500 on Sunday. And just by being associated with Dick or Tom, I'd get pretty good toll money, and so it helped me in that way, you know, without coming out of SuperAmerica's pocket and stuff.
And in 1973, Elko changes its name to Minnesota National Speedway. I don't know how many of you remember that, but they changed their name to Minnesota National Speedway, and they got NASCAR sanctioning. The pony cars are showing up on the scene. You came to the track in 1973 driving a 72 Chevy Nova that was built by Bemco Engineering of Wausau, Wisconsin. You weren't the only one to do this. Bob Giusola had a Bemco Nova. John Crest picked up a Bemco Camaro. What was so special about Bemco, especially since a basic rebuild at that time, that could cost upwards of $12,000, and that was a lot in 1973 money. What was so special about these cars that Bemco was building for racing?
Safety, for one thing. Very strong cars. He used chrome moly tubing instead of piping. Just beautiful machining work, and the cars were fast. The Nova, unfortunately, you couldn't steer it.
Really?
And Johnny Rank, who was a high dollar guy in Milwaukee, his dad bought him all this. He was a Buick dealer, and he couldn't do anything with the car either because he couldn't steer it. I could run good for 15 laps, and your arms would just wear out. And I put power steering on it. I put a big steering wheel. I did everything you could think of. It was okay in the sportsman class, but it was not the car for the late model. But that's what really got racing expensive when we started buying those cars.
Really?
Yeah. Everybody was buying Boughton chassis, and then there was a Dennis Frings chassis, and they were competing. And they had a Howe chassis out of Michigan. He sold a lot of cars. Stang's cars were all Howe chassis, and but that's what really got racing expensive, you know. And it was more fun when you went to the junkyard and got an apron and redid it yourself. You know, it was a lot cheaper, but it was more.
But now, if you went and did that, though, could you still be somewhat competitive against the custom cars?
Not in the long run, no.
So basically, everybody had to do something to.
It's kind of like NASCAR now, you know. When I was running, Joe Frisone, he's from Golden Valley. He went down and ran in NASCAR and ran pretty good, you know. And they were independents, and he wasn't a very good driver out here. and he did all right. And but now it's all millionaire kids, you know.
Right.
Those days are all gone, and that's
Blackie Wangren and all
Yeah,
those guys
yeah,
wound up
yeah,
running
see.
Daytona and
right.
and that type
but
of
those
thing.
days are gone. They ain't gonna happen no more. And that's the way it was with these chassis, you know. The home built cars were
Right.
you couldn't compete.
See, it was a lot different then because our drivers could afford, you could go down to Daytona and you could compete at those tracks. And other drivers, Bobby Allison, one of them, Tiny Lund, and a lot of those guys could come up here
Right.
and race as well. And this is when drivers would come up to actually race. It wasn't an exhibition like you see now when they bring
Yeah,
in a
right.
big name driver. They were coming here to actually race against the locals and hopefully do well and make some money.
And through Dick and Tom, I got to know Bobby Allison pretty well. And Bobby said, you know, he got hurt here at Elko, he broke his leg and he was out of that. They weren't too happy about that, you know. But Bobby says, you know, this was, I don't play golf, this is my golf game, the short track racing. That was his fun thing. The NASCAR was the serious part of the business, and this was his golf game. He said, that's what he likes doing, more so than NASCAR.
He was talking about Bobby Allison coming up here to race. A lot of you might not know the story. Bobby Allison, 76?
Yeah,
I want to
something
say
about that.
76 Elko Speedway. Right now, it's got the pit entrance and exit is on the going onto the back straightaway over in turn 2. Back then, you exited into the pits in turn 1 and entered in turn 2. And Allison got tangled up with another
Yeah.
driver, if I
They
remember
got
right.
locked wheels, and where you went off the track, that pit, there was a wall sticking out there, and he hit that just head on.
He hit the wall head on. He spent 3 days, I believe, hospitalized here in the cities because of that crash back then. And that had to
And
be
he
just-
told me, he said, it wasn't a crash, it's a sudden stop, he says. He says 70 to 0, he says in 1 second, it's too fast. It was pretty funny.
I found a letter dated October 30th, 1973. Dear Mr. Boegeman, I understand that you won an award at the Minnesota State Fair. I just wanted to send you a special note of greetings and congratulations to you. It is always a pleasure to recognize outstanding achievement by Minnesotans. Signed, Senator Hubert Humphrey, Washington, D.C. Now, my guess is this wasn't for entering a cow in a milking contest. Competing at the State Fair Speedway, that had to be something special. Any stories about racing at State Fair Speedway?
That was probably my favorite track to run, and it was the biggest deal for us guys. You know, we didn't do all this traveling to start with, and there weren't all these fall races. So to start with, IMCA was the dirt sanctioned, and when the track went asphalt, they stayed with IMCA, which would be like NASCAR today, or just one of the divisions. There was USAC, IMCA, and NASCAR, so it was one of them. So on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we could take our hobby stocks, and we could go run the fair, and that was a big deal. That was the biggest audience we ever had, you
Yeah.
know, and it was something, it was a highlight of our year.
And you raced against some very big names
Yeah, in the end.
at the State Fair as well.
Right. Darrell Walsh, Rusty Laws, Mark Martin, all those guys were here every year, you know, racing the fair. There were a lot of big names there, and they got their start and went to NASCAR and did real well. A lot of Wisconsin guys especially. So it was a big deal for us, and it was something different, you know, and fun.
Yeah.
And it was also the longest race, the 500 laps. I think it was 500 the first year, and then they changed it to 400. But that was a different kind of racing for us. We were used to just 30, 40 laps. So it was a whole new ball game. But I liked long racing. I think I could have done well if I ever had a chance to do it, you know, because
Really?
you could be more patient. You didn't have to do everything in 5 laps.
In 1974, track owner Phil Stewart suddenly passes away and his wife takes over the operations at Elko. Raceway Park ownership goes back to Darwin Hentz, and the SuperAmerica Racing Nights are starting to make things happen. Now, you were, as we talked before, you were originally tabbed by Don Engelbrecht. He was SuperAmerica's marketing guy for sponsorship. Then, if I understand it right, Refner came on board after that, and that was followed later by Trickle.
No, Trickle was before Tom.
Trickle was before Tom. How did all that come about? What was the connection between you and Don, And how did that work with the other guys then getting involved as well?
Originally, with my brother worked for Ford, and he worked nights at the SuperAmerica station in town here. And he asked him, I don't know the manager, he says, "You think they'd sponsor me? Do you know Don?" And he, "Yeah, well, I could put a word in for you, you know." Well, then I picked up Mike Keenan, gave me a sponsor, and it was like $500, which was a good sponsor at that time. He lettered the car and paid for it. And a week later, Don Engelbeck calls me and he says, "We'd like to sponsor you." He says, "I can't give you a lot of money this year. I'll give you a lot of gas help and products." But he had taken a couple of dirt track guys and sponsored them, and then they backed out of they'd given them the money, and then they were supposed to run here, because that's where they got the track. They were supposed to run Elko,
Okay.
and they couldn't run very well, so they backed out. So he says, "But I'd make it up to you next year." Well, then I went down and I talked to Mike Kane, and I says, "I really got a chance for a good sponsor." I says, "I'd like to buy my way out of this and give you your money back and all the lettering and everything. But if you say no, I'll stick with you for the year. But it's up to you." And he left me out of it, which was very nice of him. And that's how I started. Then the following year is when the late models were going to boycott. They weren't going to run out here because they were going to a 60 series race tire to make it cheaper.
Okay.
Well, the late models didn't want to do that. They wanted the high stuff, and so they were going to go run the Dells, and they said, "Come on." And my sponsor said, "John, our stations are here in the cities. This is where you need to run." He says, "I can't sponsor you. You don't do me any good running in Wisconsin Dells. You know, I'm wasting my money." And so he says, "I got to insist you run here." So I said, "Well, let me run in Wisconsin for one weekend." So I told the guys I'll run there the first weekend, but after that I'm going to run here. So I did that, and then I ran here. Well, they all found out that got pretty expensive, this traveling, you know, and that's a lot more hours overnight. And one by one they came drifting back. But anyway, when we're talking about this color of the cars, he always did my colors and the schemes.
Right. You were the Black Knight.
Well, this is how the Black Knight
Refner was the Blue Knight, and Trickle started as the Purple Knight, but then he changed to the White Knight. What was the meaning behind the colors?
We weren't knights at that time.
Really?
He says, and I was the bad guy for racing here when the other late models were going. So he says, "I'm going to make it a Black Knight." He says, "You're going to be the bad guy." I said, "They all think I'm a bad guy already for doing this." And he said, "Well, you just ban on being a bad guy." I said, "No, they do it, this works." And anyway, we did it, and he knew what I was telling him, but he did it on kind of a lark, and he made me the Black Knight. Then he came toward the end of the year, and he says, and he used to go to the dirt races in Wisconsin. I thought he was jerking my chain. He says, "See, I got a chance to sponsor a guy over there named Dick Trickle." And he pretended he didn't know who he was. And in honesty, I don't think he really knew how good Dick was, you know.
Okay.
I says, "God, you grab him in a second." I says, he's one of the top drivers in the country. He says, you know, and so he did. And I still don't know to this day if he was jerking my chain. I can't believe he didn't know Dick Trickle if he went to races, you know. But he went to dirt races mostly, and Dick ran asphalt. So then Dick was the Purple Knight that year. Well, he had a purple car. He just stuck with it and had a few SA stickers on it, A&W root beer. And then Dick asked him to pick up Tom, and Dick were very best friends. And he says, "Would you sponsor this guy?" So Don picked him up, and that's when he came up. He says, "You got to be the Knights, and their colors are red, white, and blue." Well, Dick didn't want to be the red knight. He says the Scarlet Knight. He thought of that as being girlish. I don't really understand. Dick didn't want any part of that. There was something funny there. Must have happened. But anyway, so I stayed the Black Knight, and Dick was the White Knight because he told me he was the purest.
Oh, boy.
That's all in jest, you know. But
Well, yeah, Dick Trickle had a bit of a reputation.
right. That's why this was so funny.
Tell me some Dick Trickle, Tom Refner stories
Oh,
with the three of you guys together, because there had to be some
We didn't do
interesting
much
things that took
partying
place.
going on though. We didn't do too much of it. The only thing I remember is the year I won the track championship. That was my first Bimco Camaro. And Don said, he asked Dick if he'd help me set it up, you know, him and Tom. So we went over there, and my crewman Roger was with me, and we're in a hotel room and Dick came over and I think was at the end of the first test session. And he says, well, you did pretty good out there today. And, and he's real serious and giving me some advice. And one of Don's associates, Mike Foslin, was his assistant. He came in the room and Dick was just a different person. He didn't talk about doing well, and he was just a different person, real guarded, And so I found that very interesting. But anyway, they helped me with the car and set it up, and we had a heck of a year. And then Dick told me, don't be changing springs, which we did at the time, doing a lot of changing. He said, keep the car at this height, no matter where you go, and you'll do well. That's why he come in and set fast time. Now, coming down the road, that was Dick's entrance every time he ran at Elko. He was the last guy there, and you could see the truck coming on the road and everybody cheer, because he had quite a following.
Yeah.
But that was just his style. He was a grandstander, but deservingly so.
Yeah. Well, you guys did work good together. The 1974 Elko Memorial Day Special was won by Trickle. He also set a new track qualifying record of 14.30 that day. Refner finished second. You finished fourth behind Sun Prairie, Wisconsin driver Fred Bender. Now again, this is the Wisconsin guys all coming in with the more experience that you were talking about?
Everybody from Wisconsin was pretty experienced. Really. Most of them ran, like Dick and Tom. There was 5 of them probably that ran 5 nights a week. But like Bender, he ran probably 3 nights a week.
Yeah.
And they were all good drivers. They all helped each other. They worked together.
But you were doing pretty good that weekend as well, because I found you won the late model feature on Saturday night after an 18-lap side-by-side battle to the finish line against Mike DeBars in what was called the most stirring duel ever seen at Elko Speedway, where you won by less than a car length. Next Saturday, you won your 3rd straight feature at Elko. That put you 3rd in points. And all this after 2 seasons of hard luck, which began with that 1972 rollover. Mike DeMars, now we're talking some big competition there.
Mike, that was the year when they boycotted the track.
Really?
And I would have won the track championship, except I went to Dell's and I lost 50 points. You couldn't make up 50 points in a year if you ran every night. Even if you won every night, you couldn't make it up. And it was only 2 points a spot.
Oh, wow.
So, but it was great. And Mike and me, that's a Nova I had that you couldn't steer. So I had to run the outside groove always because the car pushed. And he ran me clean, I ran him clean, and we had a hell of a race. It was a lot of fun. When we got done, I took a 6-pack of beer over and I says, thanks, you really drove a nice race. And we became really good friends to this day. I don't still real often, but I mean, we really hit it off. And Mike won the championship that year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, 1975, that was the big year for you. You moved up to a Chevy Camaro, the one that everybody I think is the most familiar with at this point. You won 2 features at the start of Elko's season. You were points leader by early June. On July 4th doubleheader, Mark Lamoureux. He is still racing, by the way. Mark Lamoureux is still racing cars. I'm not even sure how old he is now. He was young when he started.
He's probably 60, 61, somewhere in there.
Yeah. And, well, he tied you for points in 75, and at that point the battle was on. Minnesota-Wisconsin Challenge Series puts all 3 of the SuperAmerica nights on the Elko Oval at the same time, and Lamoureux blows a motor. Refner set an Elko track record driving an AMX Javelin. That had to be very unusual at that time to see an AMX Javelin. Came back in late August, broke the record again, and I believe at that time he was driving an AMC Concord. You locked in a 3rd place finish in the late season Uncola Spectacular that placed you in a solid points lead, and you held off a last-minute points challenge by Jim Weber. SuperAmerica had to be thrilled when you won that track championship. Tell me about that.
It was one of my best days and one of my worst days.
Really?
Really. Because all those years, it took me 12 years to win a championship. And that's always the goal. And when I won it, Is this all there is? Now what do you go after?
Yeah.
It was my incentive. And I got a friend I do sporting clays I shoot with, and this guy was a top shooter in the country. He won the Olympic gold. And he told my friend, he says, you know, everybody was out celebrating. He says, I was in my room contemplating suicide.
Really?
He says, I reached all my goals and I had no more. And he says it was one of my dose down. Mine wasn't that bad. but it was a pinnacle, because I just thought it would be more than what it was. And it took them, and that's another reason I admired Dick and Tom so much. Dick was always up, and I don't know how you keep yourself up that much for every race. Dick was competitive in any race he was ever in, you know. And, you know, you try and compete once you start this race, but it took incentive away from me. I don't know. I didn't have a goal no more.
When you got that 75 season championship, SuperAmerica really got behind you, Refner, and Trickle at that point. Huge promotion at the Minnesota State Fair Speedway that year. SuperAmerica, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen this somewhere. There was a beautiful poster that SuperAmerica handed out, along with other things that showed the SuperAmerica Nights. And I know a lot of people have that poster yet to this day, tacked up in their garage or stored somewhere. SuperAmerica really got behind you guys there in the mid-70s.
They really did. And everybody always asked me, said, what did they give you? You know, well, it's the best sponsor I ever had. But Tom and Dick and myself, we never had a price. Whoever needed the most help got the most help. That's what it was. They gave us gas for our tow vehicles, for our race cars, which is a pretty nice sum of money right there. And if I needed a motor, he might buy me a motor, or he might buy Tom a motor, and that's kind of the way it worked. We never had a set fee of $50,000 or anything like that, you know. And like I say, I think this guy did more for racing in this area than racing all around the country as far as that goes.
Right.
Like I say, we used to race Milwaukee, and we'd go visit the hospitals and kids, and nobody did that at that time that we knew of anyway. Yeah. And he was very, very good promoter, way ahead of his time. We gave rides in race cars. Nobody ever did that before. I thought he was nuts, but people liked it. It went over big, you know.
How long did the SuperAmerica Night sponsorship, how long did that run? Because like you guys said, you guys were running all across the Midwest at that point. How long did that SuperAmerica sponsorship go?
Oh, I'd have to look back at my cars and count them, but I probably had them 8 to 10 years. But I did a good job, I thought, with them, because my brother said, well, you should take more from them, you know, they'll give you more. I said, yeah, it'll come, you know, and I wasn't greedy, and they rewarded me. And then, like I say, he became one of my best friends, so it really worked out well, and he's one of my best friends today. We still chum together, and then an old guy at SuperAmerica, his dream was to sell he wanted a grocery store up north.
Okay.
And he's the one who put the groceries in SuperAmerica, you know, they never used to have groceries, and he did all that. And then they got a new manager, that guy, he retired, and that was kind of the end of the racing. They let my buddy go. They didn't like the racing program, and it's when I quit anyway, so it really came at an opportune time for me.
Well, it really did something, because like I said, you are known as the SuperAmerica Black Knight. Right. Refner is the Blue Knight, Trickle is the White Knight. Right. I mean, you guys are carrying that for forever. You guys will be known as that.
He sold us as a team. When we went to Rockford, we all got money, and he sold us, if you want one, you take all three, and you know, if you want Dick to run, and that was, Dick went on, but Dick could go to any track and demand money, you know, it was very popular. But it helped me a lot, and it helped Tom a lot.
When I was doing some research.
Can I just jump in for one
Certainly.
second here? I just want to be really conscious of everyone's time. We usually just end at 8, but I know that you guys have got a lot of stories that you want to talk about. So what I'll do is we're going to go ahead and stay open a little bit longer.
All right.
And we'll just keep going for a bit. If everyone needs to leave, you're more than welcome to go ahead and leave if you need to. Otherwise, we'll cope for a little bit longer.
Well, I've basically only got one more question. So you got really good timing. But what I want to ask you one one more question, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up to you a little bit in case I missed something that you want to touch on that I didn't talk about. And with everyone here tonight, because like you were surprised at the number of people that came out tonight, and so is the people here at the Historical Society. I think we'll open it up for some questions here as well. I got one question for you. When all is said and done, with such a long career that you've had in stock car racing, what is the one thing that you would like race fans to remember when they hear the name Johnny Boegeman?
I have to think about that. I guess I was a true competitor, you know. Over the years, I've been called a dirty driver or anything.
Okay.
I never crashed anybody on purpose. I maybe spun somebody out on purpose. But I would tear a fender off to win a race. I felt I was an aggressive driver. That's the way I looked at myself, not as a dirty driver. If I could win a race by tearing the fender off, I'd tear the fender off. And just as being a competitive guy, you know, that's...
We covered a whole lot of your career tonight, and it has been such an honor talking with you about this. I'm just blown away by all of it. Is there anything I'm missing?
No, I don't think so. You did it. You covered it, you know, it's a lot of years to cover. I did it for 21 years. And it's the best time of my life, you know, no regrets.
You want to take some questions if anyone out here has some?
Anybody's got any?
Anybody has any, go ahead and speak up. Go ahead.
Johnny, when you were in the middle of your career, in that whole 21-year period, did you pay attention to the other level, may I dare call it a higher level, the NASCAR level, what was then called the Winston Cup, or whatever it's called, or what would have been called then?
I believe...
What you said afterwards right there was at the end kind of reminded me of some of the reputation that Dale Earnhardt had. He would go after people and tear off their fenders and hurt them in a race. Did you think about any of those people as a role model, or were you just so consumed in your own world here that you didn't really model
I think
yourself?
I was consumed in my own world. I mean, we'd all like to... I'd still like to make a lap around Daytona just to see what it's like, but no, I never really had aspirations of going on to that. I never saw myself as great.
Or you didn't think to try to watch other races or some of these guys that were at that level and try to emulate them or act like them? Yeah, on the driving side.
Rusty Wallace is the best. I know most of you are probably familiar with Rusty Wallace. The first time I ever seen Rusty Wallace, we were in a fall race at Rockford, Illinois Speedway. That was the end of the year special. And he's the wildest kid you ever seen in your life. He crashed 4 times. And, you know, they stayed up all night, him and his brother put it back together. And I thought, boy, this guy's a squirrel.
Really?
And he was. But I mean, he turned out to be and he did a lot to build NASCAR. And him and Earnhardt tearing the fender off to win a race, just like I was talking about, they were willing to do that, you know, and it drew a lot of popularity. And I raced with some pretty good guys like Mark Martin and Tricot and all these guys. They ran the ASA circuit. There were a bunch of circuits at that time, and most of these drivers came out of that circuit. But it was a tough circuit to run, you know, and a lot of guys, see, like Mark Martin, he was one of the first rich kids to do this. He did this from the time he was 12 and his dad had a trucking outfit and unlimited money. And Tom Ruffner, I remember telling him, he says, we ran an ASA race. He said, there was a young kid in there, 16. I really, you know, and he said, he's pretty damn good too, he says, you know. And he never won a championship. But Mark wasn't a true racer in my books. He was the one that, if you're faster than me, I'll let you go. I never let anybody go. You had to work on it. You're going to get around me, you're going to drive it to get there, you know. And Mark, he kind of changed that. I don't like that kind of driving, you know. And NASCAR turned into that a little bit. Now it's kind of ending again. They're trying to end that. I was best man win.
Any other questions?
Yeah, question.
Yeah.
What'd you do for employment when you weren't,
I was a mechanic, auto mechanic, most of the time.
did you have your own garage, or
Huh?
did you have your own garage?
No, I worked at Shockley Ford is where I started, and Farmer Marshall Hayes here, we worked there together and raced together, and talking about that race, and we raced at Elko, or Raceway when it started, and, you know, the guys, Elko was a long tow, which seems kind of odd, because it ain't nothing, but it was a big deal. And then with the tow equipment, we didn't all have trailers and trucks, and me and Farmer went out there and raced in the fall, and me and him, we just battled. We had a hell of a show. They really thought it was pretty great, you know, so that's made a lot of good times, you know, and good friends, and everybody was competitive, and you're a friend at the end of the day, you know.
Any other questions?
I have just a comment, but I thought Jerry Meyer would be here for that push in the beer cart.
Yes.
I just have a question. When you with your wife and your boys, was it a family weekend thing, or did you go off and they?
My boys weren't too involved. My wife went up to all the races, and the group, I went through my crew. I never paid my crew out. At work, I paid all their pit fees, and we'd go out after dinner and I'd buy all that. That's what I could afford, you know. And I went through a lot of crewmen because the wives couldn't get along with her, you know. They wanted them home at this hour, and your wife's got to love it as much as you do, you know. And
Okay.
these crewmen were the same way. My son, right here is my oldest son. I took him over to Kakana with me when he was probably 14. It was just me and my wife and him, and he's rolling tires around, he's 14, sweating, and then the motor blows, and it was all for nothing. We had to turn around and go home. So, we didn't do too much of that as a family.
Okay.
You know, mostly babysitters, you know.
Okay.
And I kind of discourage it because it takes so much time of your life that, you know, I really didn't want to. He wanted to race once, and I says, well, Tom Haig from town here, I was just talking to somebody about him. His son was racing, and I says, well, I'll line you up with Tom, because I had helped Tom, and I says, you work with them for a year in the crew, and then if you want to race, I'll help you build a race car. But I didn't want to commit that kind of time and money. I would have helped him, but I knew what it takes, and I wanted him to be committed, and he never got that committed. Because everybody wants to drive, you know.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes.
What made you decide to kind of quit
Well,
or doing that?
I raced for 21 years. I was 38 years old. I got in the only time I had really hurt myself up to that time, at the state fair, I hit a cement pillar and I held onto the steering wheel and broke a bone in my hand, but I never ever got hurt. You know, I got some whiplashes and injuries. You get a little bit of that, but nothing serious. And at Elko, I locked up with a guy, and I did that 70-0 in no seconds, and I lost 2 weeks of my life with a concussion, and punctured my kidney, broke my ribs, all kinds of stuff. I can't, too many injuries. They had a file this thick with x-rays. But anyway, I sat out most of that year, put a car back together. I got out that fall yet, and I went to West Salem. There was a special there, and I got in an accident, and the first thing I was worried about was being hurt, and I never ever thought about being hurt before in my life in a race car. So that was kind of the start, and then I raced another year, and I found out I was 90%. I wouldn't tear that fender off anymore. To win a race, you got to be 110%, and I was probably 90%, and I didn't want to go down as a loser and make a fool out of myself. So that's, and then SuperAmerica pulled their sponsorship the same year, and we were good friends, so I knew it was coming. So it made it that much easier, you know, because I couldn't afford it on my own anymore either. But the injuries are really, well, when I got back from that injury, then I went to Florida. Me and Tom, we went to New Smyrna Beach, and they run a week show. They race every night, and they pay really big money for the top 5 spots, and it don't pay much after that. But all you got to do is win one night, and you kind of got your trip paid for. So me and Tom were going to co-drive my car, and Dick was down there, and Mark Martin, and then everybody. I had a brand new carburetor on, and I took the car out in warm-ups, and the throttle stuck, and broke my leg, and ended up in the wall and in the hospital down there. And I came back, and that's when I knew I wasn't 100% anymore. You know, I didn't have that incentive for one thing, and then when you're worried about getting hurt, you can't drive. You know, you're going to get yourself hurt. So that's why I quit.
Thank you.
Any other questions? One more time?
Okay.
Johnny, it has been a pleasure.
Thank you.